But I know how to do a Christian push-up. It's actually, I figured it out. I actually did.
It's weird. It's like you levitate a little bit, right?
Well, hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us again on the Fossores Chapter House Podcast. This season, we're exploring the overlap of spirituality and physicality, of faith and fitness. So it's a joint season with FAITH RX, and I'm joined here by my co-host, Elizabeth Kirchmeier, the CEO of FAITH RX. And today, my good friend, Nathan Oates, is our guest. And Nathan had just done one of the most incredible fitness things ever, where he walked to a monastery. 2-3 years ago, you did like I should not even try and give the details. I'll let you do it.
Yes. That was already 6 years ago. It's hard to believe.
Really?
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Yeah, that was 2018. It feels like it was 3 years ago, but there was a big thing that happened around the world in between then and now, and it messed up everybody's view of time. So yeah, 2018.
Oh man. Yeah, and you got a grant to study Benedictine spirituality. And then you found this monastery in Italy that's been around since the 9th century. Is that right?
Well, in fact, it's relatively new, but I think it had been around since the 80s, was founded then, but it is the birthplace of St. Benedict. So there was throughout history, there have been several monasteries there, but this specific one, which is the only monastery in Nursia now, is relatively new, surprisingly.
Well, I feel like the difference between 9th century and 1980 is a big one. I wasn't even close. Yeah.
There's a leap year, maybe.
Yeah. There's a leap year. Yeah, that's it. But you started out by walking to the monastery from like a village. Didn't you walk for like 10 days or something like that?
Yeah, I just walked for 4 days, but you've exaggerated the whole story already.
You met Jesus on the road, something like scales fell from your eyes,
You tell it. So my family and I were on sabbatical. We were in Rome for about a month together, and then they flew back to the States, and I started walking to this monastery in the Umbrian Mountains, and at the birthplace St. Benedict. So, and the reason I was going there were two reasons. One, I was interested in their role, as 2 years prior to my walk, there was a series of earthquakes, and it just destroyed. It's now called Norcia. The modern pronunciation is Norcia. And so it was just destroyed. City was destroyed. Streets are blown up. The power source, the water supply, everything. And everybody left as a result. Like the whole town left, except the Benedictine monks, because that's the vow of stability. They stayed. And fast forward 6 years, I'm on their mailing list now, and they have literally rebuilt the town. It's amazing. It's amazing. They opened a brewery right away. This was going to be like the center of the commerce of New Norcia. And they just started rebuilding streets, and they were the anchor. That is the effect of stability in a nutshell. So the first reason I went there was because they were 2 years into this rebuilding project, and I wanted to see how they were living into this vow of stability. And then the second reason I went there was just because the man who founded that monastery was a professor of a friend of mine who is a Dominican sister. And she said, I think I can get you into this monastery. I didn't know, and she apparently didn't think about it. This is the Green Berets of the Benedictine tradition. And so I have never done more than like maybe 3 days of solitude by myself. I've done 5 days of solitude, but I've never done more than about 3 days of silence. And I went into this thing and got my tail handed to me on several layers because these guys were intense. They were so intense, and I was so uncomfortable. But it was a life-changing experience, as most uncomfortable ones are, right?
Yeah. Well, I think I remember, the Green Beret of monasticism is a pretty great term for that. But I think I remember you saying it took you however many days to walk there. You say 4, I say 10, potato. Took you however long to walk there. But the last day you ran out of water. Isn't this right? And then you get there, and the only thing they have to offer you is beer, but you're a Nazarene, so you don't drink beer. Isn't this part of this?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you hadn't eaten anything, and they're like, "We'll see if we can scrounge up something to eat." But it was a fasting day, and so you couldn't eat right away because they wanted you fat. And then the next day was a fasting day, and the day after that, it's like they're just punishing you right out the gate. You can't talk.
Exactly right.
All you can do is drink beer, but you're not allowed to because you're a Nazarene.
Yeah, you got it right. Yeah. You hungry? Yes, I'm hungry. Oh, that's too bad. We're fasting today. Oh, shoot. Oh, wait a minute. We're fasting tomorrow too.
Yeah. By we, do you mean I'm fasting? Am I fasting today? Because I don't want to be. I didn't sign up for this. Yeah.
It was a blessing to be able to be invited all the way in to their community. I mean, virtually all the way in, and sleep where they slept. And they had a chapter house meeting with just the monks. I wasn't invited into that, but I prayed with them 8 hours a day. I worked with them 8 hours a day and just participated in their life. And it was just, it was a huge stretch for me. And I learned a ton about myself.
Yeah. And I remember seeing pictures of you in the early, I mean, you looked weak at the beginning. And I mean, didn't you tell me that there was like it was quite a brutal physical toll?
Yeah, totally. It was cold. I was hungry the whole time. I was hungry for 3 straight weeks. I was so hungry. They hardly eat. And then it was just the intensity of the prayer time. You know, I pray regularly. But they pray 8 hours a day, and I was in. So I was engaging in it with them. And the first prayer time's at 3:30 a.m. So they don't sleep a lot, and it was really physically challenging. And I didn't expect that. I kind of thought I had this tradition a little bit more familiarized, right? But it was so challenging for me, and it was deeply humbling because, as I told you before, except for a couple of the monks, they were Americans in their 20s. They were young. They were really young. So I'm twice as old as them, and they're so devoted. The devotion to one thing, right? Seeking the heart of God was so hot. It was so free from any distraction. I was just totally challenged by it. It's the only thing I really have to compare it to is when I used to run a lot, and I would run like 5Ks, 10Ks. I didn't really have a reason to do anything bigger than that. And I thought, you know what, I should run a marathon. Runners should run marathons occasionally. You got to get a marathon in, right? And so I started training with these guys in our area. There's a huge endurance run called the Western States 100, and it's a 100-mile race. And that, to say that I was a runner and that they were runners, there needed to be a different word for what we were doing. You know what I mean? The first month of training with them was really challenging because my hard run was like their recovery workout, you know? So.
And what do you do when you're praying for 8 hours a day? I mean, like, I imagine if I was going to have to pray for 8 hours a day, I'd have to come up with some new tricks.
I'll tell you a story, and maybe this helps. I met with one of the monks like on day 3. And I said, yeah, I'm thinking about leaving. Seriously considering, like, this is a terrible idea. So I met with this guy's name's Father Martin, and I said, you got to help me with this prayer time. I've prayed for my kids. I've prayed for my grandkids, which I don't have. I've prayed for my grandkids' spouses. I mean, for every person I can imagine. I've confessed sin. I've asked for clarity and direction. I've worked out vision. I mean, there's nothing else I can even conceive of. I've prayed for the whales. I've prayed for everybody. I've prayed for everything I can think of.
Killer whales.
Yeah.
He said, he's like, you're not, this is about adoration. And it almost pulled me out of my chair. I was like, oh my word, I just got called. Or this, in other words, my prayer had become basically a business meeting with God. And here's my list of needs, and here's my set of plans, And I mean, I have a good relationship with God. It wasn't like it was cold-hearted or void of emotion, but there was no adoration. There was no adoration. And what I realized, David, is that, and Elizabeth, is that I can run out really quickly of things to talk to God about in terms of, would you help me with this? Would you help me with that? Would you give me clarity about this? Would you give me direction about that? But there's no running out of adoration. Like that doesn't get exhausted. So I just needed to learn how to do that and to become familiar with that again. I had done it in the past. I had kind of professionalized my prayer life to the point that I don't think it was really a part of it anymore. So it's a very humbling experience for me.
Give us an example of adoration. Like if somebody was to spend time in adoration in prayer, what would they say? What would they do?
They would be ascribing value to God. They would be rehearsing the character of God and the attributes of God as in the form of praise, appreciation. They would be thanking God, but it's more than gratitude. It's really just, you're amazing. You know, I adore my kids regularly, and I adore my wife not as much as I should. And frankly, it feels pretty emotional. It feels feminine, frankly, to me, to be effusive with the proclamation of adoration, but it's entirely appropriate. And if your goal is intimacy, you got to learn how to do this. It's got to be a part of your experience with God. And it doesn't have to be flowery, and it doesn't have to be full of specific language, like theologically rich language. I think you can do it in the context of a workout, for example, but it's not the exchange of I need, please help me with, nor is it simply gratitude. So it doesn't exhaust itself. You know what I mean? You don't run out of things to say, because the more you adore God, the more you get drawn in to the experience. And that's the way these guys pray 8 hours a day. Then they use structure, they use the Psalms, but they are engaging their hearts in something that's more than just an exchange of request and response.
And so like it's 8 hours a day of prayer, and it's in 8 1-hour sections, right? Like it's not a block of 8 hours of prayer. It's prayer at 3:30, prayer at 6 a.m., prayer at 9 o'clock, whatever.
Yeah. But seven seasons of prayer. Mm-hmm. They pray the offices or the hours. So the midday offices are like 15 minutes, and the one at 3:30 in the morning is like an hour and a half. It's the longest one.
Oh yeah. So what's the relationship between like the 3:30 a.m. prayer and the next prayer? Like you're at 3:30 a.m. you're adoring God. Do you pick up where you left off at 6 a.m.? Like, are you like, and another thing, you really are awesome. You do move mountains. Or do you feel like you're coming to it fresh to try and start a new jumping off point?
The middle of the night one is all about, it's a lot of adoration, but the adoration has to do with persevering and enduring and trusting. The next one, lauds, the most commonly embraced prayer time is just like morning prayer. And that's more like wake me up. That's celebrating the gift of the new day, the anticipation of grace throughout the day. It's very upbeat. It's very, very good morning. You know, it's just like sunrise kind of thing. By the middle of the day, it's the noonday devil. It's temptations coming strong. I'm getting exhausted. So it's fortifying me for the battle. And then the evening prayer times are all about appreciation and gratitude. And let me take my hands off the plow now. Let me trust you with things and take my place as your son.
That's a feature of prayer that I really just don't have. I've been praying a lot, asking God for wisdom and guidance and direction about how to pray to take my hand off the plow. Where I go, like, I just don't know how to trust God and not do anything. Well, I'm willing, but like whether it's for something like the government of the chapter house or the well-being of my children, it feels like the weirdest thing to just go, well, I guess I've done what I can do. You're on, God. Like what? Why would, I don't even know how that works. I don't know how you ever say that in good conscience, because everybody I know who says that is an idiot. So I go, how do you trust God and not be lazy and irresponsible? How can I trust God through inactivity? And I know that there's things there that I don't understand. There's things there that I don't know. There's things there that God wants to lead me into. But the examples I see for how it's done are, I think, horrifying in their disobedience. So what you're describing sounds like really healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think that, and I've heard you use this term before, Jesus doesn't want the wheel,
Yeah.
It's I think that it's not it's more like leaning into the understanding that he has a bigger, greater plan almost than we talked a little bit about feeling the nudging and that and abiding by that calling that you feel like you have, or kind of going into that direction or whatever, instead of well, I'm not doing anything. God's got it. I don't have to do anything. It's not I don't feel like we're just supposed to sit on the couch and let God do all the things. Otherwise, what's the purpose of us?
Yeah, right.
What is the purpose of our body?
Yeah. Go for it, God. We'll watch.
Yeah. Anyone have popcorn?
Yeah, exactly.
Butter? Yeah.
Here's the thing that's moving the needle for me, and this is very much a present project. It's a current project. I have to shift from seeing rest as a reward to seeing rest as a gift. If rest is a reward,
that's so good.
You know what I mean? If rest is an achievement, then I'm never done. It's never good enough. I never earned it. This is the way I grew up. It's like, hey, if you'll stack this many cords of wood, then, we'll do root beer floats tonight. There was nothing bad about that. It was just, we were often using rewards for chores, right? And I just carry that in. But if rest is a gift from a loving God, and if I'm designed to need rest, just like I'm designed to need calories and water, then the gift of rest is actually what I have to receive in order to hit it hard tomorrow. So that's the only thing that is actually shifting me towards a healthy relationship with rest.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, because whether it's in any kind of ministry, Faith RX, chaplaincy, pastoral work, the work is never done. The work is never even close to done. There's no such thing as having appropriately looked after all the needs of your city or your chapter or your congregation inside of those 7 days, not even close. And so to decide that you're not going to do anymore feels like a decision not to care about people. But if I could reframe it as God saying, no, David, I care about you, so you should go paddleboarding. I care about you. You should take the dog for a walk. I care about you. You should, you should relax with your friends. And that's a gift. That's not something that you're doing because you're disobedient and faithless. That's you receiving the love of your Father. Oh, that's so good. Mm-hmm. That's so good.
In American football, there's unlimited substitutions. You're pulling guys in and out of the field and of play all the time. And the reason you get pulled out is typically in order to prepare you to go back in with greater effectiveness. It's typically seen as, okay, this is a second down situation. You did your job on the first down. You're going to get the ball again on fourth down. So come get some water, sit down for 30 seconds so that you can go back. Dr. David Timms has done beautiful work on the Hebrew day. And I've just never thought of this before, but he argues that the Hebrew day starts with night. So you start with rest. It's not the end of the day where you rest. It's actually the beginning of the day. And so you begin the day with the acknowledgement that this isn't about me at the beginning. It's all about you. And without the power and the grace and the strength you give me, I'm not going to accomplish anything later in the day after I wake up. So that's also been helpful to me in terms of just shifting my thinking to frankly, a place being less about Nathan and more about God.
How much of this concept do you explore in your new book, and where can people buy it?
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon. That's the easiest place. We decided to roll it out as a 30-day devotional. It's just 35-minute reads. And so it's an attempt to be a very accessible, like summer read to rethink and then re-experience rest at a deeper level.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's very cool. You sent me a copy. I just haven't read it yet. Clearly, because I'm still exhausted.
I was thinking that sounds like a book I need to. I need to get it.
I need that book in ASMR form. I just put on my headphones and listen to Nathan low tone me. Mm-hmm. Dave, you're exhausted, bro. Oh man. So let's talk a little bit about spirituality and fitness, because you're a big outdoors guy. You love to camp. You're a big football fan. Your son had a great high school football career. So tell us a little bit about your experience of the spirituality of the body.
Well, you're the man on this. You guys know so much more about this, and I'm learning from you. What I've learned, I think I've just experienced and haven't necessarily brought a whole lot of words to, but we live in a beautiful part of the country. And so the outdoors has always been connected to my spirituality. And I think the other thing that's helpful, well, there's so many things I could say, but when I was in a deep season of grief at one point, and running, I felt like was the place where I could get some kind of genuine expression of the grief was in that experience of running.
Oh yeah, I have a similar experience with running. Now I'm a bigger dude. I'm definitely in the Clydesdale gorilla category of runners. But when I really started my fitness journey in my 30s, I was going through hell, absolute hell, and I was really heavy at the time, and so running was the way that I really started trimming down. But I remember processing so much of my sense of betrayal by God and by church. By people who were really close to me, because the only safe place to do that was running. Because I didn't ever want to talk to anybody about it, because I felt like if I said to somebody else, I feel like my church is letting me down, they would get mad at my church, and then they would leave the church, and it would cause a hiccup in their spiritual journey. If I said to anybody else, I feel like God is letting me down, then they would get mad at God, or then they would maybe have an excuse for their own hiccups with God, and so then they would leave. So I really felt this responsibility to wrestle through these things on my own. And the intensity of that was such that I just kept running and running and running and getting faster and getting faster and getting faster, not because I cared at all about the fitness part of it. I mean, that's what got me started, but in the process of running, I was raging. And so many of my 3 mile or 5 mile or 6 mile runs, that's about all I ever ran. I did some marathons like you, but most of my runs were, 3 or 5 or 6 miles. I was like sprinting toward the end, like the last mile. I was going far faster than the previous few because I was still so angry. And I remember one time falling to my knees, like on purpose, which in hindsight seems so stupid because I was on an asphalt road, but falling to my knees, screaming in the middle of the road, like having my little main character spaz moment, pounding on the pavement, screaming the F word, wondering if God was ever going to show up or ever help me or ever get me through that season. But it was the exhaustion and the stress of the run that was so helpful for me. And then I realized, I'd sort of burned out all that rage, and I was so happy that I burned it out privately, so that I could sort my way through it. And then I got much more into weight training and much more into CrossFit and stuff, and I liked what that did for my body better. But those early days of the furious running prayers were so cathartic, so helpful.
Can you talk a little bit about when you had neck surgery and you kind of had to take a break from working out? I wonder if you experienced almost like a withdrawal kind of symptoms, like I did after a knee surgery and couldn't run for a while. I mean, I missed it, and I didn't miss it just physically. I missed it. I feel like I missed running with my soul. Like I missed that. That.
I never took a long break. I just modified everything, so like I went for lots of walks, like I would start walking 10 miles a day on a treadmill in my neck brace, or I would walk up and down the stairs, or I would, I was really cautious about my neck, but then I would start working out at the gym and group fitness classes, CrossFit classes, because I liked the community part of it. And one thing that really surprised me is, like, I knew I wasn't getting anywhere near the same kind of workout or benefit, but I was so scared of what I was losing and what I had lost, and I was so traumatized by the injury. It took me a week or two to realize I'm grieving that no one is cheering me on, because the thing I'm doing is so scary and so hard right now, and people are really nice to me, but they're not, like, they don't see the heroism involved in what's happening. And there were two parts to that. One, like a healthy recognition that, no, bro, this is on you. You got to do it on your own. And two, it really exposed my ego. And I didn't think my ego had really been involved. I mean, we all have an ego, and I'm not afraid of the fact that maybe sometimes that gets to be a bigger part of me than I would like. I was completely blind to the fact that I wanted to be celebrated. And then when I saw that in myself, it was so ugly. I was so ashamed. Like, oh, I don't want to be the person that needs that. That's so gross. I hate that guy. And now I'm that guy. So it had so many layers of spiritual transformation in the recovery. But that was, I think, probably the biggest one, is just realizing that there's a part of me that wants to be seen as heroic, and it's not a good part. Yeah. Now, but Liz also broke her neck, so I'm curious to hear how you would answer that, because we talk about broken necks a lot, the two of us. So yeah.
It's really odd that we both did that, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
It's contagious. You're going to get it too. Yeah.
Now that you come around the two of us, it's going to happen.
Yeah, so. That's it. It comes through the podcast. Yeah.
I would say that there's a little bit, I've been through a couple of things, probably neck surgery being one of the largest, obviously. But every time I suffer some kind of setback or some injury, that it's like telling a child they can't do something, you want to do it even more, I think, but there is so much of that, like Dave was saying, like the community aspect, that you just want to be around people. It's like, man, I could be sitting up in bed, I was on bed rest when I broke my neck for, I don't even remember how long I was supposed to be on bed rest. I definitely was not in bed that long. I was, doing jujitsu with my neck brace on, and carefully, as careful as I could to see those eyes.
Careful jujitsu.
Careful strangling people.
Careful ninja.
Yeah. And it's just like you miss those. You miss that community. You miss being around those people. It's such a part, a huge part of what I do every day. Teach jujitsu, so I do it every single day. So not being able to do that, and then we know there's so many benefits psychologically, emotionally, for like working out and using our bodies in a physical way all the time. So to be going through something that is devastating and depressing and all of those, and then not being able to use our bodies to express those things, like that's terrible. It's a terrible feeling, and definitely go through withdrawal.
I made the mistake too of like, I sort of anticipated that not being able to work out as intensely, and I was supposed to take 6 weeks off of work, but then things were going very badly in my absence. So I came back after 2.5, not quite 3 weeks. And even years later, I'm not sad that I did that. I mean, as much as I needed the recovery time, I'm glad I went back, because the storm waiting for me was getting worse with every growing minute. But the one mistake I made was during the time when I knew I was going to be at home. I knew I wasn't supposed to work out much. I knew I'm going to need something to pour myself into. And I became overly ambitious with what I would learn. So I had a really huge regimen for like, okay, I'm going to pray this many hours a day, or I'm going to pray and study the Bible, and I'm going to read these books. And I was learning to DJ at the time, so I was taking this online DJ course, and I was also learning to spin records, which is a different but related skill. And then I was also learning to use a different sort of complicated piece of software. So I had all this DJ music gear going on, and then I had all this spiritual stuff, and then I had all this fitness stuff, and I felt kind of panicky that I wouldn't master it all by the end of my recovery. And then my recovery itself was truncated. Yeah, so I made good steps forwards, you know, I mean, I learned a lot, but I should have just picked one thing, and I should have just given myself time to, you know, cuddle the dog. Yeah. But I was so afraid of wasting my recovery that I missed the whole point of recovering. And because my recovery was truncated both by my ambition and by the problems at work, I think I never came back as healthy as I wish I would have been. I would have handled a lot of things differently had I been healthier and had more margin than how I handled some of those situations when I first came back, which were sticky and needed good leadership. And I was only a pretty good leader. And if I was healthier, I would have been a really good leader. Yeah.
There's a guy I meet with consistently, and I met with him this morning, and he just was in a funk. And then he shared, oh yeah, I haven't worked out for 3 weeks because I hurt myself. And I was like, oh wow, it's amazing the kind of impact that I think that was having on him. Some very legitimate other things were hard. I'm not blaming the whole thing on he missed his workouts, but I was surprised at the emotional impact.
Well, I mean, I'm ashamed that I got this advice from a meme quoting Jim Carrey, but sometimes God speaks through Jim Carrey memes. Sadly, I wish he didn't, but you know, I also wish that he didn't speak through so many of those parts of Book of Revelation. But there you go. God doesn't always succumb to my preference. But you know, Jim Carrey saying, you know, depression is a real thing. It's a thing you've got to take seriously. But if you're not exercising, eating right, getting enough sleep, avoiding dependence upon substances, being outside, you're not really giving yourself a fighting chance. And I know for me, when I wrestle with my mood, because I have depression, I am clinically depressed, and I know I need to do those things. I need to get outside. I need to exercise. I need to make sure I eat healthy proteins. I need to make sure that I am very careful with my alcohol intake. I need to make sure that I even if I'm outside, if there's no sun, I need to make sure I get vitamin D some way. I need to make sure that I sleep. Like I have to take care of those things, or I'll bottom out so fast. And when I bottom out, usually what happens is I feel alone, and I feel like nothing's ever going to be better, and I feel like God is very happy to watch me squirm. And so when I start feeling alone and isolated, and I start feeling like nothing I do ever makes a difference or has any meaning, and I start feeling like God's not helping me, I go, wait a minute. These are the signs that I'm not okay. When's the last time I got outside in the sunshine? When's the last time I got my heart rate up above 140? When's the last time that I got a good, 8 hours of sleep is what you're supposed to get. I probably sleep closer to 3. So when's the last time I got 5 hours of sleep is an honest question for myself. You know, how much have I been drinking? How much rest have I been taking? How much have I been working? And then you start, giving yourself a score, and you're like, God's not mad at me. I'm just irresponsible. Yeah. I've not been looking after the body God entrusted to my care, and as a result, my body, brain, spirit, psyche is all breaking down because of lack of maintenance.
So that's a good example of trying to let Jesus take the wheel. You can't just sit back and do nothing. It's like, we are expected to participate in this thing called life, right?
Yeah. Jesus is not gonna hit my macros for me. Jesus is not gonna take a walk for me. Yeah. Those are all things we got to do. Yeah.
Dying on the cross was not enough. Could you count my macros, please?
Look, could you get off the cross and walk the dog? That's too funny.
Where are you guys finding the most, like, what are the points of greatest challenge that you're addressing? I'm wondering, like, what do you feel like are the big, like, people don't see this and now they're seeing, or we didn't realize that this would be such an awakening around this. It's, you know what I'm asking?
Yeah, I'll buy you time in case you don't have an answer right away. But I think two things that are really striking to me, and I kind of thought this might be the case, but my suspicions over time have only been concretized. Number one, most people don't think it really matters what you do with your body. Like, we're very fine to eat a bunch of high calorie foods and sit on the couch and watch a bunch of television. And like, we just don't think about our bodies very much. We don't love them. We don't honor them. Christians tend to think of body positivity as like a false god or a false idol or a pathway to vanity. I mean, we just don't care about our bodies because we don't think they're going to be around very long, so they don't matter. And then number two is, and even with that, it's not, we don't care about them. We don't know how to enjoy them. And then number two, anybody that challenges us on that, we're deeply suspicious of their motivation, which is so funny because so when I start saying, hey, your body matters, it's the temple of the Holy Spirit, here's all the ways in which it matters, and people start looking at you askance, they start really distrusting my validity as a spiritual authority or spiritual teacher. And they go like, aha, I've found one of those false teachers that Paul is always warning us about. It's this guy who thinks my body matters. And I cannot figure out for the life of me, why would that be a thing that worries you? Like, I don't need you to think that my body matters. I'm not asking you to look at pictures of me shirtless on Instagram.
Yeah.
This is not a conversation about lust. I'm not looking for permission to like bikini pictures. Like, this doesn't have anything to do with anything sinful or sexual. This just has to do with the fact that I think you'll be healthiest and happiest if you can appreciate your home, your bodily home. So one, they don't like it, and two, when you challenge them on them not liking it, they really, really, really get suspicious of what team you're playing for. That's
they don't
so
like
weird.
That, and then they don't like you for saying that.
For liking that. Yeah.
So weird.
Yeah. Like, hey, you should like yourself.
Yeah, Satan.
Yeah, that's right. I knew it, you false teacher. Yeah, how about you?
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think that I think some of the things that are being really challenged in some of the conversations that we're having right now, and I think the way you say it just kind of cracks me up, and so I like to say it also because it's funny. But like, one of the things you've said before, the question that you've asked before is like, well, what makes this Christian? Like, what is a Christian push-up? Like, what is that? And so it's like, okay, well, how are we doing what we're doing to like express our spirituality by using our body? Is it because we're doing Christian push-ups? Are those different than, a regular push-up? I think that's a really cool, in addition to what you said, like challenging those weird, and because I've been caught up in that stuff too. It's like, we say like, oh, we're a Christian gym, like our facility is that, and it's not because we do anything different. Like, you go to a jiu-jitsu gym, you're going to see that jiu-jitsu, I mean, we do have better jiu-jitsu, but it's not because we're Christian necessarily. It's like, jiu-jitsu is jiu-jitsu, CrossFit's CrossFit, like, that is all. But it's like the intention, the way that we treat people, the community that we have, the different things that we address inside of that, I think is what sets us apart. And we do that because we are Christians.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, there's a funny, yes, I think you have a very healthy grasp of that. There is a funny undercurrent of kind of like a Christian bro culture, like where a lot of Christian people, when they talk about fitness or faith in fitness or being a Christian athlete, it's a lot about, well, we're going to be amazing, and then people will love God because they'll see how amazing we are. And it's a sort of a sideways narcissism, it's like, bruh, check it. Let God be glorified by these gains. and people will say those things sort of tongue in cheek, but they actually think that way. Yeah. They go, I will be the best I can be at CrossFit, and you will see what a good athlete I am, and then you'll want to be a good Christian because you'll understand that good Christians are devoted in the gym. And I go, there's so much douchebaggery discipleship in there. I don't even know how to start picking it apart. I mean, just how about, devote yourself to that because you want to, and devote yourself to other people because that's how we're designed, and do these things with a heart filled with love because love has the power to change the world. And we know this because love is what's redeemed us and presently still redeeming us. And so I don't even know the starting points for where some of these things come from, except that they're just sort of culturally assumed and absorbed. And then you get sort of, Christian fitness memes and it's all just like, those are the things that always make me despair, where I go like, I'm not sure that anything Christian is Christian. Like, what kind of weird world am I living in?
Yeah.
The last person to say that was Nietzsche. What did Jesus come to save us from? Everything that today we call Christian. And I go, yeah, I mean, we need to be delivered from this oversimplification and one-to-one equation of, my my biceps with his Bible.
I feel like I just read that. I mean, they were nice biceps, but
yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah. How about you? What would you expect them to be? What would you expect the sticking points to be, or what have you experienced as the sticking points?
I think that I don't know exactly how to say this, but there's an accountability with physical fitness that's hard to duplicate in spiritual. I can see the maturity of and the progress of your physical fitness much more clearly in certain situations. And so there's an accountability to the commitment that I really appreciate.
Yeah, and it is sad that so much of spirituality is measured internally, like in church land, in seminaries, wherever. We measure spirituality by doctrine and dogma, by the memorization and regurgitation of precepts and propositions, instead of by love, or by peace, or by serenity, or by resilience, or perseverance, or like. And those things over time, you can absolutely see it. I mean, somebody who's been devoted to the way of love for 20 years, that's a life hallmarked by love. You can see that. But the thing that we're typically measuring, the thing that we're typically lauding, the thing that we're typically celebrating is, so-and-so can tell you which verse in Romans proves you're going to hell. And you're like, that sucks.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I feel like spirituality is measurable, but we're looking for the wrong things to measure, or we're using the wrong tools to measure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways to do fitness incorrectly also. There's a lot of ways to misunderstand how to calculate your macros, or how to do intermittent fasting, or how to do a snatch, or what the stimulus of a workout should look like, blah blah blah, right? There's lots of ways to do that incorrectly. It's very easy to know when you're doing it correctly and when you're doing it incorrectly. And I think that our faith and our spirituality have the same things, but we might be just looking at them the wrong way.
Well, and it is funny too, because like the thing that we're supposed to prioritize above all else, according to Jesus and according to Paul, and according to Leviticus and according to Genesis and according to Deuteronomy, just to name a few off the top of my head, is love. Is love. This is how men will know you're my disciples. Love is the fulfillment of the law. It's love. It's love. It's love. It's love. But we are often uncomfortable with love as the answer because it feels so wishy-washy that we go, aha, we just want to say love because we don't really stand for anything. No, we stand for love, and love is always going to cost you. Love is always going to be painful to walk out. And I think what we're afraid of is somebody giving a cheap answer of love, but love is not a punchline. Love is a way of life. And I think that's what we're missing. You quote chapter and verse about this doctrine or that doctrine. Give me 5 minutes in Google. I can come up with 5 other verses that counteract yours. The thing I can't ever get past is love. Yeah. Love is it.
And that's super measurable. The way that we treat people, the way that we serve, the way that we give, all of that. Like you said it. They will know your mind by your love. I think that's super measurable.
Yeah. Yeah, even it's really funny, I mean, there's such a conversation right now about the LGBTQIA plus community, and a big part of that conversation always includes the word "but." Like, yes, we love them, but, or yes, we accept them, but, and I go, that ought to be a trigger. Like, as soon as you got to add a "but" into that, something about the quality and nature of your love has just been compromised. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to believe whatever somebody else believes or anything like that. I just think, for me, when I hear myself talk, as soon as I start qualifying who I'm allowed to love and how much and what that love looks like, but I got to be careful, because I laugh at myself. I go, why am I so concerned that somebody might get away with something? like, well, I can love them as long as my love doesn't somehow communicate that they're getting away with it. This is the scandal of grace. Everyone's getting away with it. If anyone ever at all can approach the throne of grace, it's because God let us get away with something. And that the only reason we're able to be in the presence of God is because we're being advocated for and invited into it by the Son and the Spirit. Like, nobody earns their way in. So when I hear myself starting to go, well, I want to love them and I do love them, but that doesn't mean, I go, Dave, you just missed it. You just missed it. You became the gatekeeper instead of the acolyte. And so that's just a journey for all of us. But I find it very telling in my life that for as much as I want to be a person of love, and as much as I admire the life of Jesus and want to embody it, I still butt my way through life and make excuses and am stupid.
Yeah. Measurable. That's why we're not going to the games, Dave. Yeah. Besides the spectators.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, man. Well, any last thoughts you want to leave our audience with before we wrap things up, man?
I just really am grateful for your work, both of you. I appreciate doing, and I hope that increasingly it can be funneled in to the broader conversation of spiritual health. It seems to be almost an alternative. Physical fitness seems to almost be an alternative route to wholeness for some. And so it's either or. And I love that. And I feel like it's so critical, especially for folks my kids' age and, in their 20s. It's not an either or world for them. It's a both and they're going to get some their spirituality's got to have a physical nature to it, I think, at a level that's beyond what I experienced as a younger person. So I'm just grateful for what you're doing. And I really want to cheer you on to continue to press into this, give us handles, some practical ways that we can bring this into the sanctuary, into the small group, into the dinner conversation. I know how to bring it into the workout. I know how to do that. But I know how to do a Christian push-up. I figured it out. I actually did.
It's weird. It's like you levitate a little bit, right?
Yeah, I'd love to be able to more intelligently and naturally bring it into the sermon space, the liturgy.
Oh, thanks, brother. Love you tons, man. And if there's anything I can ever do for you, my answer is always yes. You know this. I love you very much.